Robert Eggers is a writer, director, new on the scene with 2 matches and 2 wins under his belt. In 2015, he wowed us with The Witch, a terrifying horror piece that was notable especially for having extremely well-researched dialects and set design.
Let's leave the wood.
Just 4 years later, Eggers gifted us with another period piece, this time based in the late 19th century, and once again showed a remarkable amount of research in both the set dressing and the nearly inaccessible dialogue.
And if I tells you to pull up and apart every floorboard and clapboard of this here house and scour 'em down with your bare bleeding knuckles, you'll do it!
This time, Eggers uses even more tools in his belt to help immerse you in the time period, including the aspect ratio of the black and white footage. Being 1:19, it's shocking how quickly you adjust to it and forget the movie is nearly square. Shots like these help a lot to blend away the letterboxing. But if you've seen The Lighthouse, then you probably had some questions after your viewing experience, like, what the f was that all about? Now, if you really want to know that bad, then why not just ask the creator himself? Well, because many great artists who make work that is difficult to decipher the meaning of immediately refuse to explain their intent in the art.
Can you explain what's happening at the end of that video?
No.
And Eggers is no exception. When he explains The Lighthouse, he uses extremely vague descriptions and hardly ever gets into the symbolism of the movie. There just isn't anything to be gained from explaining the meaning in your art. It's like explaining a joke or a magic trick. It can cheapen the impact and make the art now seem plain. Also, you run the risk of ruining an impactful meaning that the viewer came up with for themselves. Giving the quote, correct interpretation removes their interpretation from the list of possibilities.
Blue. Red. Green.
Green is not a creative color.
For instance, the crew at Small Beans did a frame rate episode on Under the Skin, and their takeaway was that the film was an allegory for the male gaze.
She goes out and she tries to experience humanity, and she becomes kind of enamored with it, curious about it, until, as Abe said, when the male gaze goes too far and it becomes, I'm sick of this, I want this, your visage, your appearance is mine.
But the book it was based off of had much stronger themes than the cruelty of factory farming, and so the Small Beans guys got to develop their own meaning without just going to the creator. So director's intent is a closed door if we want a finite answer to the question of... Doing some digging of my own, I've seen a few interpretations. Maybe it's about the battle between generations, or toxic masculinity. Even Eggers himself echoed this.
You know, when I was writing this story, this hyper-masculine story about 2 men, with my brother, I was thinking, why are we writing this right now? This is the worst time to be writing this story. And then once we had the first draft, we realized, like, oh, I guess we're talking about toxic masculinity and like everything that's like messed up about it.
But most of these interpretations don't go much deeper than theme. So here's what I think literally happened in The Lighthouse. But to give a point of reference for my theory, let's first walk through the plot beats of the film. The Lighthouse is a story about Ephraim Winslow and Thomas Wake, 2 lighthouse keepers who apparently go mad. Ephraim and Thomas pull a guard swap with the previous crew of an offshore lighthouse. The pecking order is set up immediately, where Tom barks orders at Ephraim like a crusty old sea captain.
You hear me, lad?
Aye, sir.
Swab, dog. Swab.
Ephraim is aware that the handbook states the 2 of them are not allowed to drink, and should alternate shifts where one takes care of the mundane task around the island, like keeping the water clean, while the other watches the lantern and the lighthouse itself.
I tend to light.
Well, the rules is alternating shifts.
It's the mid-watch. That's the dread, lad. My watch. Night to morning.
And Ephraim is expressly forbidden.
You don't go in there.
After a rough start, the 2 men start to get to know each other. And we find out that Thomas used to be a sailor, and Ephraim used to be a logger up in Canada.
Foreman found you too hard-tempered for carrying an axe.
Just like you said, I just had enough of trees, I guess.
Ephraim has puzzling nightmares during their stay, mixed with what appear to be flashbacks. In a fit of rage, Ephraim kills a seagull that pesters him against the stern warnings of Tom, and the wind changes.
I seen you sparring with a gull. Best leave him be. Bad luck to kill a seabird.
This brings about a terrible storm that ruins their chance of changing shifts with the next crew. The men are stranded. Ephraim finally joins Thomas in drinking, and the 2 begin to turn to wild men. The state of the lighthouse deteriorates at an alarming rate. The 2 men begin to bond, and in a moment of tenderness, Ephraim explains that his name is not really Ephraim.
No, I'm Thomas.
I'm Thomas. You're Ephraim.
I lied.
Now, young Tom tells old Tom his secrets against old Tom's wishes for him to not spill his beans.
Spilling any of your beans to me. I ain't interested.
Young Tom tells a story.
Seeing
He was a logger who had an unfair boss who called him a dog all of the time.
Tom, you dog.
You lying dog.
He insists that during a drive he was helping his boss move a log and his boss slipped and drowned.
Just stood. Watched him get swallowed by them logs.
He claims to not have killed his boss, although he admits to wanting to.
So I packed up his kit and fixins as if they was my own, and Ephraim Winslow, well, now he'd got a spiffy clean slate, and Thomas Howard, well, he don't. No prospects.
Over the course of the stay, young Tom becomes equally obsessed with the lighthouse and begs old Tom to see it.
Just let me in the light, old man. I've learned so much from you. Just let me show you another chance. Forgive and forget, I said.
He even contemplates murdering old Tom for the key, but gets caught and decides to hide the knife.
Queer way to wear your shoes.
Just didn't want to wake you, is all.
For a moment, young Tom even decides to leave, but is thwarted by old Tom, who says after some arguing and possible gaslighting that young Tom is the one who destroyed the escape boat.
Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, Tommy. Last night you made a confession 'twould make a saint swear. I don't have nothing to confess, but you spilling your beans. Look what it's done to you. It's made you mad. And I knew you was mad when you smashed up that lifeboat just now and chasing me with an axe trying to kill old Tom.
Old Tom also begins to ask some
On
questions.
this rock. 5 weeks. 2 days. Where are we? Help me to recollect.
But then ask,
Who are you again, Tommy?
"That's a damn fine question, Mr. Wake." I think the two Toms are the same man. I think Tom really did kill his boss and has compartmentalized it while suffering a mental break.
I'm probably a figment of your imagination. This rock is a figment of your imagination, too. You're probably wandering through a grove of tag alders up north in Canada, like a frost-bitten maniac talking to yourself, knee-deep in snow.
Where I believe he still is. I think the lighthouse is his mind, and that's why it's deteriorating. I think old Tom is a version of himself who was allowed to see the truth of the light, the truth that he killed Winslow. And that compartmentalized version of himself berates him for being of poor character in the exact manner that Winslow did, and protects him from the truth that he just can't handle, even imploring him to not spill his beans,
Don't be spilling any of your beans to me.
to not look into the truth.
You lie, Thomas.
Stop it!
You lied to yourself, but you ain't had the sauce to see it.
Some more evidence towards this is that young Tom finds a captain's log, and old Tom has been keeping a record of all of young Tom's misdeeds.
Sister missing. Given to habitual self-abuse in the supply chain.
How did he know that young Tom was sinning against himself in the shed? He wasn't there. And how did he know that young Tom had that knife?
Better than me. The dinner knife you pocketed. You ain't safe with it.
So I think when young Tom kills old Tom here, he has become mostly one complete entity again, the real Thomas.
Foreman found you too hard-tempered for carrying an axe?
Spill death and triple drain. Make the ocean caves our bed. God who hears the surge's roll, deign to save a suppliant soul.
Evidenced in part by his failure to recite the long sailor toast that old Tom often said, but now knowing it by heart.
Hell to relief.
And now,
He finally goes to the light and looks inside. He sees the truth and is destroyed by it. cannot handle the guilt and concedes to death and spends eternity in torment. And that's what I think happened in the f***ing Lighthouse. Fight me.
Nicolas Cage, good or bad? A challenge, certainly, but not unsolvable.
Oh, I'm a cat. I'm a sexy cat.
We've all been there. Maybe a mention popped up on Twitter. Maybe you overheard friends postulating. Or maybe you were just scrolling through Netflix and you saw it. And you had to ask yourself,